Bruno was a gentleman. Bruno carried himself so well that he was the perfect representative for the world of professional wrestling to be champion. He was a gentleman outside the ring, and he tried to be a gentleman inside the ring.
During that time, it was an ethnic thing around New York. Italians loved him. He was a great. He was great for the sport, and he worked hard. And he left it all in the ring. He didn't bring none with it. You know, he gave the people their money's worth.
It was such a big fan base for Bruno, you know, and of course, you know, Vince McMahon, you know, he had not only the Italians, you know, that would support Bruno, but everybody supported Bruno. You know, he was their world champion.
Bruno was the Italian Superman. Yeah, there was the fans just loved him. Bruno had the entire Italian communities in New York, upper New York State, and almost every place he'd travel came to see Bruno and cheer him on. He was their hometown guy. Bruno always talked about his rough beginnings there in Italy, and his family, you know, hiding from the Nazis, etc. And here was a guy who went through all this horrible childhood, and to come here from Italy and make himself a success. How could you not be of Italian heritage and not back someone like that? He was just great. But what he did was, when he was in the ring, he proved that he wasn't a one-shot winner. He proved that what he said he would, on an interview, that he told people that he would go out and do, he actually went out and did. And everyone respected him for that.
A lot of people used to ask me, the newspaper people and whatever, used to ask, or radio, whoever, would ask me, what is it about you? And it's a tough thing to answer. I don't know. There was nothing fancy about me. All I ever wore was a pair of tights and my boots. It's not like I was some kind of a, you know what I mean? And so I never understood. Listen, I used to step from Madison Square Garden, Ivan of Italia. As soon as my head would stick out to go toward the ring, that whole place to bust out, start chanting my name, Bruno, Bruno, you know, just from the bat. It used to give me goosebumps, but I didn't understand. I don't think I really ever fully understood what it was, but I was very grateful. And what it did for me, it inspired me and drove me that much more in that ring, because I wanted those people to feel like what they felt of me, that it was worth it, and that when they left that arena, I wanted them to leave and saying, wow, that was great, you know what I mean?
There was no theme music back then. I mean, you know, fans joke today he could have had a song like I Am a Real Italian, like I Am a Real American for Hulk Hogan, but he didn't need theme music, even if it was made back then, and it wasn't. But his theme music was 21,000 fans at the Garden all yelling out, Bruno, Bruno. And before his match, a match would end, and then Bruno's match was next. And before anything happened, before you even saw the opponent, the fans in the arena, out of anticipation, were yelling, Bruno, Bruno. There was, it gave you goosebumps.
One of the greatest talents that I have ever been in the ring with.
He had amazing charisma. He had every skill set you'd want in a wrestler. He could brawl, he could wrestle.
Bruno was God. Bruno was the man. Bruno was the man from the 60s. I'm Italian, I grew up, and I was a fan of Bruno Sammartino. And I remembered seeing Bruno. And that's how I started taking wrestling photos again. I saw in the paper, it was 1970. Tonight, Bruno Sammartino. So I said, well, I gotta go see this. I haven't seen this in a long time.
One of the top acts in the history of pro wrestling.
He had a natural charisma, not like someone, not the charisma of, let's say, the type of a Dusty Rhodes, but almost a quiet charisma, if that makes any sense. And that was Bruno.
Bruno just, I mean, he had the world. He had the world. This was your
you're right, what Italian immigrant babyface, and everybody loved him, and he got the pity, and he got the, and they wanted to see him fight. And when Bruno fought from underneath, it was great. And I got to grow up watching that stuff, and then, man, how many years later, sitting with him when he's getting inducted into the Hall of Fame and all that stuff, and shaking his hand and spending 5 minutes with him when he could be talking to bells going, holy crap, that's about the coolest thing I've done.
Bruno Sammartino, again, was a stand-up guy, rugged pound for pound. He may not have been a great wrestling technician, or whatever you want to call it technically. He didn't have, I mean, he was good. He was a rugged, just a big guy, but the people loved him. He went on for 13 years, was world champion, and everyone loved Bruno, and he was a stand-up guy.
Bruno was made into an unbelievable champion.
We had two things in New York that didn't exist anywhere else. Number one, all the magazines came out of there, and they used to do like 9 different magazines per month. Now, because I was the headliner and because they covered Madison Square Garden, you know, always seeing these guys, even Japanese news people, they'd be around the ring, you know, taking pictures. So I didn't even know it till the first time I went to Japan, how popular you were in Japan, for 2 reasons. One, because of the Japanese reporters that were taking pictures. I found out later that you were plastered all over their magazines in Japan. Also then, because when you mentioned about the magazines that came out of New York, when I started going overseas, I couldn't believe it. Those magazines were in every country I ever went. You see them in the newsstand and whatever. So all this really helped me get established around the world. And not only that, but New York, Madison Square Garden, it's at its own network, so that people could pick it up. So when we wrestled in the Garden, they could pick it up in Texas, in California, you name it, anywhere, you know what I mean? So you were, again, that's why I was one of the lucky to have headlined there, because whenever they would call McMahon if they could get a date on me, I always went there as the headliner. You know what I mean? Like the Roy Shires, they wouldn't dare ask for me unless I was going to be the main event.
Nobody was bigger. Nobody's ever been bigger. I mean, Hogan was big later on, and you know, The Rock and all these other guys, you know, and that's a new generation. So I don't know, but I mean, you know, Bruno was over big time in the WWF.
When you talk about all the great champions and the people that just had a sense of class about them, Bruno Sammartino is right at the top of the list when you talk about class.
How do I want to be remembered?
Yeah.
You mean in the wrestling world?
In wrestling or in life? Let's stick with wrestling right now.
Well, in wrestling, I would hope. There's one thing about me that I can honestly tell you. I'm not going to tell you by any means that I was the best, by no means. But I can tell you this without hesitation, that I always gave it 110%. Now, that 110% may not always have been great, because a lot of times you had to go in that ring with injuries. And even though you tried, no matter how hard you tried, you still couldn't be your best. And in this business, the way it was then, you got hurt, you had to go. You still had to go if you were the headliner. I had then, and I have to this day, that's why I go out of my way for the fans. I honestly feel, if you saw my speech in Madison Square Garden with the Hall of Fame, very sincere about it. I owe everything success I've had here to the fans, because I'm a realist. If the fans didn't support me like they did for all those years packing the Garden, they say, hey, Bruno sold out the Garden 187 times, he did this, he sold out it. If those fans didn't pay their money to come and fill those arenas, you know what I'm saying? What was I? would have been back in construction as a carpenter that I was learning the trade. So I feel that the fans I owe everything to my fans, and I want to be remembered as a guy who gave it his all and appreciate it more than words can say. The love for the fans who made me a so-called star and who helped me be able to support my family in a way that I never knew growing up during those war years and all that. So I don't know if that's too long of a thing, but that's how I feel. That's my true feeling.
All right, I don't have any more questions. Is there anything else you feel like you want to say, or?
You're the boss. I'm just.
Oh, you're the boss.
No, no.
You're the living legend.
Yeah, right. I always felt uncomfortable with that. People would say to me, "How did you become the living legend?" I said, "I don't even know what that means." You know, coming from the old country and everything, because when they said living legend, I never forget it. I asked Arnold Gold. I says, "What the hell's a legend? What is it? What are they talking about?" Yeah. You know, I never understood the word. You know what I mean? Legend. What does it mean?
I don't know either.
I still don't know.